We could have everybody rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Thank you. Moving on to the agenda, we do have an amendment for the agenda. I think the entire board has seen it. Am I correct? Am I correct? Can I have, I'd like to offer a motion to amend the agenda with that which has been provided to the board and the superintendent.
Make a motion to.
Accept?
Second.
Second, any discussion? All, please, go right ahead.
I think it's an awesome idea to amend the agenda. I just wondered if for future we might consider the impact the executive session in the middle has on our student representatives' ability to participate in the whole meeting.
Good call. Yep, didn't think of that.
Me neither, till I sat down next to him. So.
Let me take another. All those in favor of the amended agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll now switch over to the new agenda. Jake, I apologize for that.
Oh, it's okay.
Wasn't paying attention.
You could do something?
I'd like to open up the, now for public comment. We have a 10-minute period allocated for public comment. If anybody would like to come up, please state your name and your address and proceed.
Good evening. My name is Fran Brock. I live in Ward 5. I'm also a BHS history teacher, and I am the intern program coordinator at the high school. For many years, Burlington High School has been a well-respected and in-demand training ground for the local and regional teacher training programs. We have had loyal and beneficial partnerships with UVM, Champlain College, St. Michael's, and the TAP program now housed at Champlain College. Intern candidates have wanted to work with BHS teacher mentors to better learn how to work with our socioeconomic diverse population, dynamic immigrant population, special needs population, rich variations of religious and race populations, and students with varying degrees of academic preparedness and skill. Interns who have trained at BHS have learned best practice teaching, pedagogy, and classroom management tailored to meet the needs of our diverse student body. The interim mentoring program has given BHS an opportunity to spot the best new teachers, and in the past, we have hired some of them. We also have seen the teachers we have trained successfully land and excel at jobs in other Vermont schools as well as in other states. Our record for training young teachers has been more than good, and the program has been self-sustaining. The district does not pay teacher mentors anything. Stipends come from the sending programs. Money, however, is not the driving motivation for providing the mentoring, which is why a reduced faculty, larger class sizes, and fewer academic choices for students will limit the necessary time and programming our teachers need to be reliable and good mentors. BHS teachers will not be as available to maintain the district's partnerships and to serve the needs of our community's teacher programs. We will no longer be the first in line for tapping the best future teachers, and our community's university and college programs may well find it difficult to place all of their candidates in mentoring assignments, which could hurt their programs as education students look to other schools in other states where there are more training opportunities available. I thought you should know what may well have been an unforeseen consequence of the reduction of faculty at BHS. Our partners in the community, UVM, Champlain College, TAP, and St. Michael's, the teaching profession and the students who such programming serves will lose out. Winning back the loyalty and trust that we have built over the years with these higher education programs will not be quick or easy to recover.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We'll take that under advisement. Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to speak? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the section for public comment. I believe we do have one board reflection from Commissioner Curry.
Thanks. I just want to take a minute to express that we lost a really wonderful member of our community last week who helped to build the Regional Education and Television Network. Doug Denbaben was involved in RETN for many, many years, as well as a former city councilor. He was a friend, and he was a really wonderful, warm, and friendly person who contributed a lot to our community. And I just want to acknowledge for the RETN staff present and those who may happen to edit our tapes and catch this, that wanted to express our deep regret and for your loss.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Curry. Is there any other statement from the board during board reflections? Seeing none, we'll close this section. Moving on to the board report, of which there is none. We've decided to relinquish that time to the superintendent's report, as he had quite a bit that he wanted to cover. I'll go ahead and turn that over to the superintendent now for the superintendent's report. We do have just to remind you, we do have a time-sensitive stop at no later than 8:15 at this point. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Board Chair. The first item, which is the expanded learning presentation, unfortunately, Christy Glees had an emergency with her newborn this evening, so we'll have to defer that item, and we'll follow up at another board meeting with that information. The next item is to address the audit management letter findings. We did present this at the Finance Committee and felt it was critical for the board as a whole to actually see that document and review it as well, too.
Yeah, I was going to put the management letter response document that we shared with the Finance Committee up on the screen, if you can pull it up. But folks should know it is available still from the Finance Committee meeting agenda from, I think it was 2 weeks ago. So some folks have heard some elements of this, so I'll try not to dwell on it. But as a quick recap, every year the auditors provide us with a management letter that points to some of the areas where the district can make changes to improve the quality of the financial information that it produces in the audit. And there are a handful of items in this year's management letter, and what we did in our response was just repeat what each one of those items was for reference, and then provide a few sentences on our planned response. And some of the activities are things that we are doing now or that we plan to get underway in the next few months before the end of the fiscal year. Other parts of the response will take longer to implement. And as our auditors even mentioned when they were here presenting the audit, we're not going to solve all of these things this year. It's a process, but what we hope to do is tackle some of the bigger ones and make some measurable progress on a lot of the different areas that were raised. Some of these issues we definitely can solve and are well on our way to solving. So with that said, I guess I'd ask the chair, do you want me to go through each of these items again that we covered in the Finance Committee, or take questions, highlights? How do you want me to proceed?
I'd appreciate the highlights that we'll be tackling this year.
Okay, so a
We'll
few
take
of
some
the...
questions. We'll take 5 minutes of
Yep.
questions after that.
Some of the things that we'll be tackling in the relatively near future, we have some issues around just doing bank reconciliations and other reconciliations between our general ledger, which is kind of accounting speak, but that and some of these subsidiary ledgers. So one of the things now that we are up to full staff in the business office, we're already closing in on getting to a point where we'll have timely bank recs, which is a really important thing so that you can kind of know that the financial information you're seeing in terms of spending is actually based on what is consistent with what our bank's showing that went out the door. So that's one of the things that will happen before the end of this fiscal year, as well as starting to do some of those ledger reconciliations. One of the other things that was flagged that's a big deal is the student account work, and that there are a lot of little elements that were identified by the auditors that we can do, and some of those things we're going to be able to do very quickly. The bigger issue there is really creating a set of procedures for how the student account should be managed at the school level. And so that's something we're going to take a little more time on and try to reference what is working in some other districts. So we've asked our auditors, oh, perfect, and for some references on examples of districts where they think they're doing it really well. And we're hoping we can build off of that. I'm just going to scroll down a little bit here. There's student accounts toward the end. So you can see there's a lot of little things here, and some of them are really easy to implement. But probably the most important thing longer term is getting to a point where all of these accounts are actually managed, and the accounting for them is done in an actual accounting program. What we have at the schools right now is a lot of examples where this is being done in Excel, which is convenient for the folks doing it, but it really isn't a robust system, and it doesn't allow us to answer questions or to perform reconciliations in a really robust way. So I think one of the questions that the business office is going to be exploring is whether or not it's most efficient to incorporate these accounts into our current accounting system, or whether it's more efficient to simply get an off-the-shelf kind of QuickBooks product and have folks maintain it that way. That's the kind of it's an easier way to get the accounts onto accounting software to do it that way. There's less setup, it's quicker, but we're also mindful of the fact that we would have to be bringing some additional training to the folks at the schools who actually will be doing this on a daily basis. So we have some thinking to do in terms of how we proceed in that one, but I know that that has been something that was flagged by our auditors last year and was flagged again this year, and we intend to make some actual progress. I guess the other thing I'll just say that did come up at the Finance Committee meeting was a request just to get some maybe perhaps like quarterly updates on the progress toward moving for some of these things. And so our plan at the next Finance Committee is to come back with an idea of kind of what that might look like, just so we can have a process for monitoring progress toward achieving some of these things, and also for flagging areas where we hit roadblocks that we didn't anticipate.
Any questions regarding the audit findings or the plan to move forward on these? Very please.
It's not a question, it's just a statement. So one of the things that the auditor also was clear about is that we've made really good progress, but to ensure that we continue to make the progress going forward, that we need to be very vigilant about this year. So he did recommend that the April Finance Committee meeting have a sort of in-depth, here's where we are for this fiscal year. And that was agreed to at the finance meeting. So just wanted to let the public know that that will be happening at the next.
Yep, that's actually a good point. Ron, our auditor, was emailed me this week, and we were just talking about scheduling some pre-audit work for them in April ahead of that meeting. So their intent is to come in and help us also do some year-end projections toward that. So he is definitely aware of it, and he was following up.
Great, thank you.
Anything else, Commissioner Stoll?
Nope, that's it.
Anyone else have anything? Thank you. Superintendent?
Okay. Next item is the update on Top Horizon. I'll ask Director Irish to come to the table.
Yeah, do you want this?
Yeah, leave it. I'm coming. Just take this side.
My report is on the board docs agenda. It's just an overview of the process that we've been undertaking over a significant number of months. Although recently it's gained a lot more attention, it's kind of nice to not have the normal boring political stuff on the news and be a little bit a part of some extra excitement.
Paul, is your microphone on?
I think so, because it, how's that? All right. So the process, we reviewed a lot of different properties for potential relocation of each of the programs. I think we're up to 23 different properties we've looked at now. Criteria meeting the program space needs overall, but specifically appropriate sizes, student safety, program needs, the type of spaces for the program work, the types of spaces that On Top uses, some small breakout rooms. Most of their students are 6 to 8 students per group. Again, 26 students in On Top. Horizon's a little bit larger, 37 to 40 kids. They tend to be more classroom size, 12 to 15 per classroom. So each program needs about 4 classroom spaces. On top has some additional breakout spaces and spaces for offices. Bathrooms, kitchen, office spaces, things like that. And initially somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 square feet total in each of the programs. So we're also looking at the criteria of the location. Primarily, we'd like to find a location within the city limits. Many of the spaces that we looked at were not within the city limits. And a critical one is that it's on a CCTA route, because on top, about 18 of the 26 students ride CCTA transportation. Some of them ride our buses, some actually go to the tech center. They go to On Top, and then they go to the tech center. And finally, within a reasonable budget range. And if you're looking at properties between $10 and $15 a square foot, if we're at the high end of 8,000 square feet of program, that totals out to $240,000 a year. That's not a sustainable funding, even building it into the program's tuition. So that was a concern, trying to make sure we're not going for anything higher than those numbers. It became quite clear after about the first 3 months that there was no location that would satisfy the needs for both programs, because they both needed to have certain separate facilities. So we would need 2 separate male bathrooms, 2 separate female bathrooms, 2 separate entrances, et cetera. So we started looking at separate locations for the programs, started some negotiations with some landlords, and then you start going through your due diligence. Fire marshal, do we need to put sprinklers in? Are the exits okay for students? Public works inspection, and starting to redesign the space to fit, if necessary, to fit the needs of all of the students. ADA, how much would it cost to refit? And if it's too expensive to refit, that drops it off the table as well. And then zoning for conditional use, which the landlord started looking into in January. One of the landlords. The other one shouldn't be a problem with conditional use. The current status, we're reviewing those final options, 2 locations, and actually a DRB was supposed to be deliberated last night and could not come to a decision, so they postponed final deliberation until March 15th on the Chase Mill site. That's been in the news, so everybody knows about that. The details on the costs and the landlords is something that I believe needs to be in executive session. There is no contract, there are no leases, there's some potential numbers that have gone back and forth. And before the board comes to a decision, they need to look at those numbers with a fine-tooth comb, and then after the board comes to a decision, we have to go to Board of Finance and City Council. So there's some other things that have to happen. But we've been working to make sure we have a program we can bring to you that fits within those parameters. I didn't know if there were any other questions or if there's...
Are there any questions? Commissioner Curry.
So I wanted to understand the staffing impacts of splitting up the programs. Are there shared staff that will be affected?
Not really. I don't have all of those names and people on my fingertips. The most important one would be the director of the program. If they're in 2 places, you need to have like a teaching principal or an assistant director if the sites are separated.
So are you saying there are shared staff or there are not shared staff?
not.
There are no shared staff?
The special ed staff works for On Top. They're all special educators. And the Horizon staff is a regular ed program.
And there's no overlap, no hours from any of the administration staff? Nobody goes back and forth?
Administrative assistant, both the principal of the program and the administrative assistant
Or what?
are in Taft, so they would have to be...
They service both programs. The
They do service both
They service
programs.
both currently right now.
So there are shared staff?
For the administrative, yes.
Okay,
The
so-
teaching staff aren't shared, but the administration is currently shared.
So has the ITC committee received a plan for managing shared staffing?
That's part of our executive session work. We haven't gone into all of the numbers for all of the shared staff and what the cost would be. That would be built into the cost of running the programs.
Because I just noticed that in your criteria, it didn't include staffing as part of your criteria. So was staffing not included in your criteria? Like finding a place where staffing costs would be level or reasonable.
It did not rise to the top of the things that were going to be important decision factors. It was deemed that we could adjust staffing to fit the program. Both programs are tuition based. One is limited by the state, whatever our BHS tuition is. That's Horizons. The other one is a special ed program, so the tuition depends on the expenses of the programs. So the cost of the staffing did not seem to be a critical decision factor for whether we could or couldn't do it. It has to be considered in terms of the overall budget, and it's a recurring cost. But it wasn't one of the driving things that would make or break a location.
So if the Chase Mill program doesn't work out, is there a plan B? Have you talked with South Burlington, Winooski?
We are currently looking at sites in South Burlington and Winooski. We're looking at other sites in Burlington, and there are many places. I think currently we have about 4 or 5 potential sites that we're still looking at.
And have you talked to UVM about
Yes.
the option of staying there?
There is none.
Have you talked to them about alternative buildings that they might have?
Yes.
Or the other higher institutions?
None of the other ones, but UVM had no space.
But you haven't talked to the other ones yet?
Not at this point.
Just to be clear, we are having conversations with UVM around alternate space that they may have available as well, too. I mean, we're kind of going to the realm of some of the search that we don't want to disclose too much, but there are other options. I think what you're looking for is that, yes, we are looking at option B, C, D, E, F, to ensure that we have a place for our students come September and the staffing are intact and we're ready to move forward, so.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Quick one.
Commissioner Stoll?
As the host of the program, can we legally have it outside our city limits? Has that been looked into?
I don't think there's any reason for us not to have it out.
Are you sure that doesn't then put it into the jurisdiction of the South Burlington School District or something like that?
No, these are independent programs. They're not really schools.
Could I just request that we just make sure that that's absolutely clear so we don't?
It was a while ago. I'm trying to recall if we asked AOE that question, and I'd have to go back and check my notes. But it did. We wouldn't have looked at a lot of the sites outside if that were the case, because that came up when Howard and I were talking over this. But that was a long time ago.
I think that would just be good to double check if you don't mind. Thanks.
Any further questions? Seeing none? Thank you.
Thank you.
Superintendent?
Thank you. I'm just going to stay here because it's convenient. I wanted to give you a quick heads up around timelines for strategic planning. So we've started doing the preliminary work in terms of laying out a plan so we can develop a strategic plan for the district. One of the critical pieces around that initially was to start, I've had conversations with a number of consultant groups around strategic planning and way to move forward. And at the end of those conversations, I'm feeling it's better for us to move forward with our own design in terms of, I will lead it along with a team of staff, and we'll bring forward some timelines and some strategies in terms of where we're going. What I wanted to give the heads up for the board is there will be a significant role for the board to play, particularly in around the month of May. I will be requesting probably a day and a half from the board specifically around the work around that. So I'm not sure maybe if that should go through policy governance to look for a date, or how you want to sort of look at that, because that will fit into our timeline.
Must be a special meeting, so that's fine. We can call that.
Yeah, okay. So I will bring that forward in terms of suggestion around that, and be able to give you some more details as we flesh out the program. But one of the things that's critical to have already identified is that we felt that we need to start with the community in terms of the conversation, as well as with staff in terms of talking about the different pieces around what we believe in, our philosophies, and some of the big ideas and things that we have, and to have a process that we can kind of go through. It takes a lot longer when you engage everyone, but I think the product will be a lot more rich, and people will have an opportunity to give some input and be involved in that. So look forward to that, and I will bring forward the timelines in terms of your specific roles going forward. I will also be asking for board members at different other stages, so they might want to be involved, engaged in some of the community consultation pieces that you might want to be play a role in that, and I think that would be beneficial to us in terms of your content.
I just wanted to be clear on whether or not you were asking the Policy and Governance Committee to come up with a day-and-a-half timeframe.
Yeah,
For us to do a doodle poll, basically.
Got it.
yeah, okay. Yeah, so I thought we'd do it ahead of, we've got a couple months, right, till May, so if we start now, we should be able to find some time that we can pencil in there, right? So, and I'll give you some at the next board meeting, we should have some more detailed information. And you actually will see some information before that I'll send via email and communication to other stakeholders before we get that. We're really looking for a really engaging process where we're going to actually target and invite certain community partners to be involved as well, and looking for an opportunity to infuse technology for people to have input that may not be physically there when we have the opportunity. And there is an element that you don't normally find in strategic planning, which is an education piece that we're going to add in there, because I think there's information around what we do and how we do it that people would benefit from understanding that a little bit to help them, think about, where we go next. Because often people just, sort of respond based on their past experience of what they've heard. So I think sharing some key pieces of information around program and curriculum and some of our practices will be helpful for people to get a better understanding of where we are now and where we could go. Any questions on that item still?
I did have a question about engaging the business community. We certainly know that there's a exodus of young people after they graduate from high school or after they go to college and come back for a short period of time and then leave. But we also know that there's many businesses that have told us that it can be very tough to hire. And it's not just because people aren't willing to move here, it's because perhaps the preparation of those that are graduating from the high school don't always have the skills that make them viable for a Chittenden County workplace. Mm-hmm. So I was just wondering if you were going to engage Chamber of Commerce, the Greater Burlington Industrial Corporation, if you were going to, or any of the other, there's also the Business Association and so on.
And I think as I said in the beginning, we've had some discussions, and we felt that we needed to really start really broad and have thoughts and input from everyone involved in our community. That includes our community partners, particularly the agencies and organizations that work in our schools and support our kids, but as well as our business community in terms of what their thoughts, because we've talked about opportunities for partnerships, right? So if they come to the table at the beginning stages, they can start that dialogue in terms of what they can offer to the district and what ideas they have they see in the workplace as well too, in terms of giving us more input in terms of deciding where we go. So it will be a very open process in terms of inviting as many people as you want. So I've been involved in strategic planning with different organizations, and one of the things I was sharing with staff in terms of where we should go, where I've done the process when you've had about 100 people involved, the board, some staff, and some key stakeholders. And I've done a process where we had 10,000 people involved, right? And both processes, I would say the results were very similar, right? The difference probably would be that the one process with more people felt more connected to the final product, that they could see, yes, I remember when we talked about this, and that resulted in doing that. So sometimes it takes a little more time and a little more effort to reach out and try to encourage people to be part of it, but at the end of the day, they can see how we got there and what their input was in establishing where our goals are. So,
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, so the next item, which I'm delighted to produce, is will be a regular item, and it's called the student report, and it's going to be held by our own Jacob, our board member, and he has a report. So I'll leave it over to you, Jacob.
Yeah, thank you. So this past Friday, we had a meeting at Hunt Middle School with some Edmonds middle schoolers, some Hunt middle schoolers, and as well as some leaders from the high school that work with student reps. And we really talked about how we want to increase student communication with the board. So we broke into groups. We had high schoolers working with middle schoolers, and we had all kinds of students working together to see what really, how we want to move forward with getting more student voice on the board and having student representatives represent something instead of just kind of not being so active. So we came up with a couple ideas, and the two main themes that we saw after we reviewed the groups wanted to see is we wanted to increase communication with board and the administration within the schools, and we also want this committee to be for the students, by the students. We want it to work for the students. We want a diverse collection of students in there. In my group, one of the middle schoolers raised having an interpreter, so students who maybe don't speak English can have a voice on the board, which I thought was great to hear from a middle schooler. We want this committee to be a safe place for all students to speak out their ideas about the board and the way administration is taking schools, and we also really wanted reps to report back to their school communities. So instead of just being elected and kind of being secluded with their other representatives, we want these representatives to tell their peers what progress is being made, and as well as their peers to tell them what they wanted to see in schools. So we want increased communication all around. And then what we really want these reps to do is to give feedbacks for the program. Sometimes when the board passes something, there's not a lot of student feedback. So for example, implementing tech or such things like that. So we hear the student side of things instead of just the financial or business stuff like that. We also heard students want to understand the budget more. So one of the first questions Yale got was, why was healthy living cut? And he did a great job of explaining to these middle schoolers that sometimes we can't have all the programs that we need, even though we would like them. So I think the board, with this program, the board can explain to its students that sometimes we need to cut things because of budgetary restraints. Students also wanted to feel like their voices had an impact on the decisions that the board made. They don't want to just be speaking and having the board just kind of listen, not actively listen. I think it's hard because sometimes students don't always have, you can't hand the keys to the board over to some students, but I think it's important for the board to take into consideration student views. And finally, we just want students and the board and administration to be all involved in this. We don't want this to be secluded. So again, communication was a major theme in this. So I think Friday was extremely productive day. Tomorrow I'll be meeting with the BHS reps to see where we can take this, what this committee will look like, and hopefully we can get something very soon. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you, Jake, for your report. Now, I'll take away from that it was a great opportunity to actually get all the students together and have that conversation. It was good to see the excitement. We'll continue to work on that. One of the key focuses that I would like to see from our students is to actually implement some sort of action plan, actually do something, because I think it's enough for them to talk about what's happening on the board, but I think really their real worth is coming up with a plan, that's something they can implement. I gave them some examples of great student leaders that have been around North America and what they've achieved, and great things from starting from their small classroom to international, right? And I think we had some really good students in that room and probably in the classrooms that could come together and look at some action items that we could do here in Burlington and have everyone. So thank you, Jake, for taking this on, and we look forward to the progress. Last item I have under good news, I wanted to just highlight one particular good news item. The document is posted so people can go in and read all the different pieces, but I wanted to highlight this one here. There was a story done in one of the papers highlighting one of our staff, Amit, who happens to work in our board office. And it talks a little bit about his experience in terms of being a refugee. And you talk about students. He was a student in a refugee camp for 15 years, something like that. And at that time, he also became a teacher. He was a student teaching students. And he eventually made his way to the U.S. and has gained employment, has done several types of jobs, several liaison jobs. Now he works in the office, and he's working with our staff, all at the same time working on his PhD. You think about his journey and the story that you tell about his family life and what he contributes to not just our board but to the community. It makes us proud to know that we've got these type of employees that are really dedicated to seeing the progress of our community, and they're really invested into our students. I had Hamid actually speak to a group of UVM students in a class, and they were blown away in terms of, his experience by the age of 20 compared to their experience, and it gave them a little pause to think about, how fortunate and privileged we are to be in our situation. So if you pick up this paper, Adventures of a Kid's Life, I think it is. I've got a copy here if anybody wants to see it, and the article goes in detail around his life. So I thought I'd share a little bit of that as good news. So that's it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. At this time, I'd like us to, we're about to make a motion, but before I do that, I want to explain what I'm trying to do. I'm going to be making a motion to amend the agenda, and I'm going to be making a motion that needs a 2/3 vote. We have 10 people here, so I'll require 7 people to vote in the affirmative. My objective is to skip over the executive session that's scheduled for 8:15, of which we're 35 minutes early. What I'd like to do is continue on with the traditional agenda to show consideration for Jake being here and others that did not know that we were trying to plug an executive session in the middle of things. And then at 8:15, it'll be a cold stop, of which at that point, we will move on from there. If we finish earlier, we have everything all done, we'll go to executive session, and we'll only have to come back here for adjournment. So I'd like to make a motion, just so I won't worry about the wordsmith and so everybody understands. I'd like to make a motion for a change to the agenda that would allow the non-executive session agenda to proceed until a time-certain hard stop of 8:15, at which point we will then commence into executive session. Commissioner Kirk? Thank you. Commissioner Barlow? All those in favor, please say aye. 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 All those against? Thank you. The motion's unanimous. Saying that, I will go on to the approval of the consent agenda items. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Curry, seconded by Commissioner Harrington. So Mary Ann's having to catch up over there. All those in favor of the consent agenda items, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Thank you. Consent agenda passes unanimously. We'll now move on to some of the committee reports. Just moving fast, I want to make sure we don't miss anything. We'll move on now to the committee reports, the curriculum committee. Commissioner Dodson.
Thank you. We had what I consider to be a very exciting and productive curriculum committee meeting tonight. It felt to me like we, I don't know, breakthrough might be a little bit too strong, but there was a movement and evolution into what I hope is a new phase for the committee, which is indicative of what I think is sort of a new phase for teachers and coaches in central office. And that came in the way of a presentation from some of our district coaches about a new data system. And what was really powerful about the data system was it was pretty comprehensive. This was an elementary school data system, but it went by grade level, by teacher, and by each individual student. And what it did was it moved from left to right with a chronology that allowed you to see the building blocks of different assessments that happened throughout the year, and the results of those assessments were in this spreadsheet, pretty large spreadsheet. And so that, for me, achieved a number of goals. One is that by having all the data in this place, it allowed for all sorts of ways of manipulating a spreadsheet. For those people who are familiar with Excel, you can pretty much pivot around anything, which I think is a really powerful tool. It allowed for archiving, so you could see over time what was happening for an individual student in terms of performance and assessment. It also had in there an opportunity to take notes and indicate interventions. So not only is the data there, but teachers are talking and then responding to what they're seeing and trying out different interventions, and so that would be there. So once again, I'm in the 5th grade, and there's a student who's been struggling. We've identified that student. We've been doing some work, and that work began in 3rd grade. As a 5th grade teacher, I'll have a record of all that work. I'll have a sense of what's been tried and how I can take off from there and try some new work. So to the degree that the curriculum committee has been really trying to push this idea of looking at the data, particularly around literacy, particularly focusing on proficiency in the 3rd grade, the richness of this data source, I think will allow that to a much greater degree, allow us to see movement, allow us to identify places where there are challenges, and then to apply some interventions once again to try to address that. So in terms of measurement, in terms of taking responsibility for the work, in terms of supporting teachers in their growth, this tool and the attendant activities on the part of teachers and coaches was very exciting to me.
Any questions for Commissioner Dumpster? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Harrington, Commissioner Seguino could not make it here today. Are you on the diversity and equity? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm losing track of people here. Commissioner
There was no diversity and equity meeting between this board meeting and the previous one, so I would not know what we would update the board on.
That's fine. That was it. Commissioner Curry, policy and governance.
We had a great meeting with Val Gardner, who came to talk to us about what process looks like for transitioning to policy governance. And in April, right? April, we are actually going to develop a recommendation to the board to make a decision about moving to policy governance and present the reasons why a board would choose to do that. Then we invited our student rep, Jake Bucci, to come and talk about, we have a policy about student representation to the board, and the policy doesn't actually really get followed very well anymore. So we realized, I think we've talked about this before, there's a weakness in the whole connection. So we invited Jake, and Superintendent Obeng brought up what Jake reported on tonight. So thank you for taking the ball and running with it. And then our committee offered to just kind of steward that whole relationship between the students and the board and develop that as the students recommend and as the superintendent recommends. So if that's all right with everyone, our committee can do that. And then that was it. We finished up the superintendent evaluation that we are presenting tonight in executive session.
Thank you. Commissioner Curry, I think we received notice that there's 2 more Policy Governance 101 and 102 are going to be conducted again.
Yes, thank you. There are more trainings through VSBA. So please do check their schedule for anyone who would like to attend those. And I think you can just sign up, right? Or do you guys have to allocate a certain number of slots?
No, just sign up.
Sign up. You can always contact our office if you need some support. We can
Okay.
help you with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Ann.
Commissioner Dawson?
Would that, Liz, be like a phase 2 or 3, or would be, if you've gone, you've probably had this training?
You've
been
probably,
to it.
if you've already been to one, I think it's going to be the same
Same thing.
that they're doing every spring.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Any further questions for Commissioner Curry? Thank you. Commissioner Kurt.
Nobody's going to be able to hear me. So, ITC has been just focused on top horizons and on the contracts for the work to be done at Phase 2 at Edmonds School and Champlain School. Everything's in our minutes. If anybody has any questions, Paul has some beautiful pictures over there, and Marty can speak to them. And the only other thing I have is we have a motion that we'd like to make. The motion's a little different than the one on the documents, so I need my glasses. I'd like to make a motion to award the construction bid for Champlain Elementary School to K&R Adams as bid at $1,102,050. That's a little different from the way it reads on board docs, but some changes had happened since I got that information. Number 2, from Mark.
Two.
Okay. I guess,
Discussion, open it for discussion.
any discussion, any questions about the bid?
I just have a question, just really quickly, like why were you in favor of them giving the bid? What was the rationale?
The bid process is, we have to take the low bid unless there's extenuating circumstances. So it's pretty much governed by the way the state sets it up. That's why we accepted them. But we pre-qualified everybody based on business practices in the past and if they've done business with us and if they've handled a project of this size. So we did pre-qualify before we accepted the bid anyway.
Any further questions? I'm sorry, any further discussion on this motion?
So
Curry.
the number you just read, I thought was 1,102,050,
Yes, that's
which
correct.
is higher than 1,095 than we saw in the motion.
That's correct.
But you just said you had to take the low bid.
Marty can speak.
The way we structured this bid was we built in a number of bid alternates. Basically, as David pointed out, with the structure of having to pre-qualify these contractors, we have to go with the low bid. We also don't have the ability, if that bid is higher than what we've budgeted for, to go back and cut things out after the fact. So we structured that bid with some alternates so that we could choose to build in those alternates into the base bid or not based on the amount that we had budgeted. One of the alternates that we built in was to take a $7,000 credit to stockpile the amount of material, the amount of dirt that we're digging up in the parking lot at the Champlain site and stockpile it on the property services site for future phasing. Once we realized the amount of material that was going to be, that it really wasn't realistic to stockpile it, so we're choosing not to take that $7,000 credit. So that is the difference in that dollar amount that was on the board docs compared to the dollar amounts that we're asking for now. But all bidders had that same opportunity to include that bid alternate.
So I'm still confused. The motion that was on the agenda is 1,095, 1.095. The motion we're voting on is 1.102.
Yes,
So we're voting on the higher motion, but you just said they took the $7,000 credit out.
correct. So we were initially had a credit built into that dollar amount, and we chose not to take that $7,000 credit.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, and I have a handout if you want to see all the bid alternates.
Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor of the motion to award the construction bid for Champlain Elementary School to T.R. Adams as bid at $1,102,050, subject to approval of a bid waiver by the state as only 2 bids were submitted, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
I just want to point out one more thing. We did receive that bid waiver from Agency of Education.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Kirk, anything else?
Nope, that's it. Thanks.
Commissioner Stoll?
So I was not at the last Finance Committee meeting. It was chaired by Stephanie Seguino, so I would ask that someone who was there, I'm sorry, I was not at the last Finance Committee meeting as I was called out of town, so Commissioner Seguino chaired it, but she does not appear to be here, so maybe perhaps someone who was there can, Commissioner Curry, if you want to do that?
I'd be happy to. We had public comment from a member who was concerned about the On Top Horizons location, and we talked about the audit follow-up plan that Director Lavery presented tonight. The budget update was that there are now more details on the website. The superintendent filled us in on more specifically as those will be developed. Those will be uploaded, and we talked about like doing kind of frequently asked questions and different ways of filling in the line item budget information. We talked about the city and the school collaboration on the capital plan. And then some concerns about moving forward with how that would look and developing more of a communication plan. And I understand there's a motion, but I think the chair is going to make that, right?
You going to make the motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
So other than that, I think the minutes are pretty complete. Any questions?
Commissioner Stoll?
Why don't you make it?
I'll be more than happy to. So there is a motion underneath the Finance Committee report. There's a motion that the Burlington Board of School Commissioners recommend to the City Council to authorize and direct the Chief Administrative Officer to pledge the credit of the city by issuing negotiable bonds in the amount of $2 million in fiscal year 2017 for needed school capital improvements as referenced in Section 62 of the Burlington City Charter. Can I have a motion to approve? Commissioner Kirk, can I have a second? Commissioner Skoll, discussion. Stoll, sorry.
I'd just like to say this is a standard procedure that we do yearly because we do bond the $2 million when that is part of the budget, and as part of the bonding process, we do need to get this, we need to pass this motion so that it is it's consistent with our city charter language. So it's a...
Thank you. Any further discussion? Commissioner Kirk.
Just for clarity, this $2 million bond is needed so that the motion we just approved for the $1.1 million so we can actually do the repairs at Edmonds and at Champlain schools.
Correct. Correct. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion as stated, please say aye. Aye. All those against? None? The motion passes unanimously. At this time, the non-executive portion of the agenda has been completed. I'll now like to make a motion to consider executive session to discuss negotiations and a personnel matter where premature disclosure could place the school district at a substantial disadvantage. May I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Commissioner Curry, second. Commissioner Kirk, discussion. All those in favor of proceeding into executive session, please say aye. Aye. All those against? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll now go into executive sessions.